Right, I apologise for the delay, but it was very important to councillors to go over some information. Good afternoon. I formally declare open this unscheduled council meeting of Colac Otway Shire Council on 11th of October 2023. Almighty God, we seek your blessings and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. Please be advised that this unscheduled council meeting is recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open council meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. The purpose of this unscheduled council meeting is to consider Contract 2405, Building Surveying and Inspection Services, and Lake Colac Holiday Park lease key terms. I note that all 7 councillors are present. Moving on to question time, Colac Otway Shire Council encourages community input, and integral to this is the opportunity provided to ask questions at council meetings. A minimum of 15 minutes is allowed for question time at unscheduled council meetings. Community members wishing to ask questions at council by video conferencing were requested to receive their intention before 5 p.m. on Monday the 9th of October 2023. No requests were received. Received a question in writing from Jason Schramm, David Walsh and James Judd. A question from David Walsh. With the best value for money often used by council when it suits their purpose, or we must get the best commercial return for ratepayer when we no longer want to extend a lease, for example, Forest Caravan Park, Lake Colac Caravan Park. 1, how can spending $500,000 of ratepayers' money with a $77 a week rental return to ratepayer be best value for money or make any commercial sense? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy, please.
Through you, Mayor. As Committee of Management for Crown Land, Council has responsibility for permanent and long-term infrastructure at this site. The infrastructure has deteriorated to a poor condition. Council has resolved to allocate $500,000 to renew infrastructure in the park to achieve the following outcomes: secure co-investment from another party, secure a professional operator that is capable and experienced in ensuring the Lake Colac Holiday Park can continue to offer accommodation to visitors at a reasonable standard. We understand that the holiday park doesn't return a financial profit to Council when investment in asset renewal and infrastructure is considered. This is true for most of Council's operations. In this case, Council is committed to the infrastructure investment in recognition of the importance of the park's role in providing accommodation to support economic activity in Colac and the region.
Thank you. Question 2. Does the $515,000 spent by the tenant of fixtures become council property, or can they remove said fixtures at the end of a lease term, for example, portable cabins, etc.? General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. It is proposed that all capital infrastructure improvements will become council assets at the conclusion of the lease.
Thank you. Question 3. Is there a time limit when the new tenant must spend their $515,000? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
It is anticipated that the majority of the capital improvements will be undertaken during the proposed closure of the park from 24 April 2024 to 20 September 2024. Whilst there is no time limit proposed, it is in the tenant's best interest to undertake the works in the short term in order to receive a return on investment.
Thank you. And question 4, does the tenant's rent of $77 per week exceed the last tenant's weekly rent? Mr. Surin again.
The rent received from the previous tenant in the final year of the lease equates to about $242 per week. There was no requirement for the previous tenant to pay rates or make any capital investment in infrastructure, particularly in the last 5 years of the lease. While we don't know what a final lease might look like yet, the current proposal by the preferred lessee includes year 1 rent of $77 per week in rent and a further $62 per week in rates and charges. Additionally, the lessee will contribute an average of $1,650 per week in capital works over the first term of the lease, which is proposed to be 6 years. Importantly, the proposal offers a shared approach where council and the tenant will both invest to lift the standard of the park to industry standards and better meet expectations of current day visitors.
Thank you. Question from Jason Schramm. Question 1. At Council's February 2023 meeting, it resolved to spend up to $500,000 on long-term infrastructure of the caravan park if a lessee made a commitment to match the funding and to implement a master plan to be agreed by Council. A, where is the master plan agreed by Council that determines what Council and the lessee will invest in regards to long-term capital infrastructure? And B, does Council consider signage, boom gates, etc. long-term infrastructure? Response, General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. A master plan concept was included with the proposed tenant's submission to the expression of interest process so that councillors have an understanding about how the park might be redeveloped. Should Council resolve to award a lease for the Lake Colac Holiday Park, Council will work with the lessee to refine and agree on a final master plan for the site as per the special conditions of the lease. Yes, Council considers signage and boom gates long-term infrastructure.
Thank you. Question 2. As this lease gives no indication to the public or the Council what, if anything, will be built with public funds and highlights that the yearly return to Council is virtually nothing when a market value would be closer to $50,000 a year rent, would it consider running the park itself as the Shire did in the past to provide better value to the ratepayer? Response from General Manager.
Through you, Mayor. The officer's recommendation in the agenda indicates for the public the types of infrastructure expected to be funded through Council's investment of public funds. Council recognises that providers in the market have more expertise and capability in the day-to-day operations and marketing of holiday parks. Council's strategic direction has been to attract a great operator from the market, and therefore a model of a self-run park hasn't been considered at this time.
Thank you. And question 3, are there any yearly ongoing costs to the Shire in regard to the caravan park, and if so, what are those costs? Mr. Surin again, please.
Through you, Mayor, should Council support the recommendation, all costs associated with operating the Lake Colac Holiday Park will be the responsibility of the tenant.
Thank you. Questions from James Judd. What are the priorities of the Colac Otway Shire Council? Is it to prop up the Lake Colac Holiday Park or the interests of the region? The proposal to close the general public the park from 24th of April 2024 to 20th September 2024 will block access from almost the entire period for cool weather sports, plus hinder the tourism industry as this period includes 2 major holiday periods as well as the entire second term school period, plus impact on all planning for the third term school holiday. Also have a very major impact on the health of the community through restrictions on engagement in sports, plus support and access by people to other events in the region. Response from the General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. The Lake Colac Holiday Park provides an important accommodation offering for Colac and the broader region, which is a demonstrated visitor accommodation shortage, limiting our ability to transform high visitation numbers to economic stimulus. A winter closure is preferred because it is the period where there is least demand for the park accommodation.
Thank you. Question 2. Why has the Colac Otway Shire Council officers recommended that the Lake Colac Holiday Park can be closed for works to be done from 24th of April 2024 to 20th September 2024 instead of delaying the start date 1 week until 1st of May 2024 as Anzac Day falls on 25th of April 2024, since you could have some travelling wanted to be in Colac on Anzac Day? Response, General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, the proposed closure dates were nominated by the preferred lessee, where they expect low occupancy. It's important to note that key terms recommended to Council indicate that the park could be closed from 24 April 2024 to 20 September 2024 to assist with capital improvement works. However, it doesn't mean that the park must close. Therefore, there is flexibility and any closure would be dependent on the length of time the tenant requires to undertake works, along with forward bookings.
Thank you. Question 3. Is there any certainty that the Lake Colac Holiday Park will still be operating by the time the Colac Show is held in 2023? as the last extension was only to have sure it would operate over the spring school holidays, but still permit it to be revoked early. We cannot have any more extensions to a lease that do not require operating till a minimum set date. Under current agreement, no people have certainty the holiday park will still operate over 7 days after taking a booking. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, the park is operating under a management agreement until 30 November 2023, not a lease, and this period covers the Colac show event.
Thank you. Question 4. Under recommendation, item 3 in brackets 9 and 3 in brackets 2, is any time specified in when the cost by council and the leaseholder must be run up by, or could this be an obligation on all ratepayers for an undefined period of time and funds for Shire infrastructure be withheld? Plus, if the fire service levy plus council charges was to exceed $5,000 per year, would the rent payable to council be reduced by the excess charge per year of council have top up the operator's budget by any excess amount payable? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, there is no specified time for when capital improvements must be undertaken. However, it will be in the lessee's best interest to undertake improvement works in the short term to receive a return on investment. Council's funding will be provided on the basis of agreed milestones for the delivery of works. Council doesn't envisage a scenario where it tops up the operator's budget in any way as a result of rates and charges exceeding $5,000.
Thank you. I'll move on to question time. I know Mr. Judd's here. I think he's the only constituent here. I can't see Mr. Judd. Do you want to ask any more questions, Mr. Judd? Thank you. That concludes question time. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, please? Thank you. No declarations. We move on to item 7.1, Contract 2405, Building Surveying and Inspection Services. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the awarding the Contract 2405, Building Surveying and Inspection Services. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. In relation to the recommendation on page 6, point 4 refers to the name of the successful tenderer being published if the recommendation is adopted. What about the cost of the contract? Will that be published or at a minimum the budget for that service, which would give a broad indication of the cost?
Yeah.
Thanks, CEO.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Through the Chair, I'll respond to that one. So we do issue contracts that are approved through the chamber on our website, but for schedule of rates contracts, we don't have a fixed contract amount to issue. So a fixed contract amount is issued. The others will just say the type, the nature of the contract. In this case, it'll be a schedule of rates contract. But I'm sure that we're able to share what council budgets annually. Just to demonstrate the general cost of the service, we could do something like that.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anything under this contract which will ease the situation for people in more remote areas who are looking for a building surveyor but can't find one? Can we offer building surveying services to those people?
Through you, Mayor, no, so this contract won't offer any additional capacity to the building surveying market. As we've talked with councillors before, the building surveying employment market is really, really tight. There's a shortage right across the country, so this won't expand on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report. Thanks, Councillor Hart. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart. Oh, sorry, did you have your hand? No. Councillor Costin, didn't put your hand up to oppose. You were moving your microphone. Yeah, thanks. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. The building service contract that is provided by council and is required to be provided is a very important service, of course. and I'm satisfied that having been provided with the various assessments that council's undertaken and the process that they've gone through, this is the best value for the council for this particular service. I note the comment from the CEO in response to my question that whilst it's a scheduled rates contract, it's a bit hard to nail down to the dollar the exact price, but by providing the budget for this particular service, that would give an indication of the cost of the particular contract. And I know that there's been separate discussions in the past about whether council should be providing building surveying services, and some issues have arisen in the past. So I support what this contract does, and think that if there's ever to be a discussion about whether council expands its services, that should be a separate discussion.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor. Echo Councillor Hart's comments, and just point out that obviously the council needs to go down this road of facilitating for this contract. The council has had a past practice of employing people in these roles, but that's become very challenging today and almost impossible to achieve. And so, like many other councils, we are now going to market to contract out to firms to do this, and this is an appropriate way in this current circumstances. And I also am comfortable with the due diligence that's been followed to arrive at the recommended tenderer. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor? Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 7-0. Councillors, next item 7.2, Lake Colac Holiday Park lease. Key terms. The purpose of this report is to consider the key terms for Lake Colac Holiday Park prior to finalising the lease for presentation to a future council meeting. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
I'd just like to flag that I've got a motion when the time comes.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm interested to know how we determine the rental after year 6. It seems that it's under the method of market rent review. Can we get an explanation of what that means, how it will be conducted?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Costin. The method of market rent review is specified in the standard conditions of the Crown Land Caravan Park leasings template, which council is required to use for this site, which specifies the process as per the Retail Leases Act 2003. What that means is prior to 6 months, so at least 6 months before the end of the initial term of the lease, when the market review is due, the tenants provide council with a minimum of 3 years of financial performance records, and then council has a period of time to provide a rental value, proposed rental value to the tenants. As per our lease and licence policy, we would do that by getting an independent valuation and then present that valuation to the tenants. They have a period of time to then either hopefully accept that, or if they don't accept that, there's a follow-on process with multiple stages. The first stage would be they submit an objection and get their own independent valuation to present back to council, and then both parties enter good faith negotiations. If, again, it's unsuccessful, then either party can request it goes to, I'm going to say arbitrage, but that's the incorrect word, and a independent third party comes in to manage negotiations between the two, and they do a third independent valuation. At that point, you would hope or assume both parties would agree on a rental value, and if they don't, either party can end the lease in good faith. If that process takes longer than the 6 months until the end of the initial term of the lease, then for the periods that process takes, the existing rental as per year 6 will continue to be paid until a new rental value is attained.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. If this recommendation is approved, or if Councillor Finnegan's proposed something that's a bit different apparently. In relation to the $500,000 that council might be paying for various improvements, how is the process going to work? How is that? When is that money going to be handed over? Does council just sort of hand over the cheque, or are there various processes to decide whether it's handed over in one lump sum or in parts? I'm just trying to understand how that would work.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. CEO.
Thanks. Mayor, I think that Mr Siren will respond to Councillor Hart's question, but perhaps we can scroll down, because officers have presented a revised recommendation to actually try and make that particular point much clearer for councillors. Our recommendation is now clearer for councillors and the community. So Mr Siren will speak to this.
Thanks, CEO.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question. So obviously this is an important aspect of council's contribution and how that is delivered. So we're proposing that it would be done on an agreed project management plan, which would include whole points that council would need to approve, and then payment would be made once we've considered those whole points and made the relevant approvals.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Finnegan, you flagged an alternative.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So my alternative to the officer recommendation just makes one change, and if we could go down to it. So essentially the revised officer recommendation would be changed at point 3G1, which will now read essentially that in relation to our commitment of February 2023 to contribute $500,000 excluding GST towards long-term infrastructure at the park, for which council has a responsibility as a delegated Crown land manager, council will contribute to infrastructure, including but not limited to a new ablution block, ensuite removal, camp kitchen, and other infrastructure. This is a change from the revised officer recommendation, which specifically mentioned boom gates, an office and residence, and signage, as I believe this will give a clear indication to the community, a clear indication that these are what we see as priorities, I believe, and also gives an indication to the community of the things that we would like to see council's portion of the money that we're putting up, the $500,000, spent on first.
Thank you. You don't have to argue it now. Is there a seconder for Councillor Finnegan's motion, please? Councillor White, thank you. Is there to be opposed? Councillor Costin, thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much. So I've sort of gone through it as I moved, as I was going through a preamble there. But I think it's very important that hearing feedback from the community since the agenda for this meeting came out, that the community expects us to dictate what our portion of the funds, our $500,000 of ratepayers' money is spent on. And I feel that my very minor amendment to the revised officer recommendation sets this out in full. Sets out that, you know, we would prefer to see this money spent on the things which are really, you know, the key tenets of things that need upgrading at the park. So things like the new ablution block, which is the 12-block camp kitchen, and also, you know, other maintenance like and removal of the former en-suites, which are getting a bit long in the tooth. Doesn't preclude that if we get to, you know, a budget total of having spent $450,000 of that money from looking into things like boom gates and the like, but it also just highlights what we would expect that money to be spent on.
Thank you. Councillor White. You reserve? Yep. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I struggled with this one. I've tried to give it a good hearing, but I'm not clear how we got there, and it seems to me we might have painted ourselves into a corner. It seemed odd that we let go a local leasee who's paying $12,600 per year to replace this with a proposed leasee, a multinational group, who are only paying around $4,000 per year, and some unknown amount after year 6. And they will only take up that offer if we invest $500,000 into the park and cap rates. I just don't see that the economic benefit, the net economic benefit to be gained, is sufficient to justify the generous lease conditions. So I'm opposed to this proposed lease on 2 main grounds. First, that the $500,000 investment of ratepayer funds and the other concessions offered by council will give the proposed leasee an unfair advantage over the other Colac private sector accommodation providers, particularly those who've gone through exceptionally lean times in the accommodation industry over the last few years during COVID. And secondly, I'm a little disappointed that we haven't adequately explored the potential benefits of direct operation of the campground by council ourselves, so that any profits that can be made we, council, can invest back into our local community. I strongly support our local private sector, particularly in this case, those who provide worker accommodation, and I'm opposed to the use of ratepayer funds, rate caps and the like, that gives the proposed leasee of our campground an unfair advantage over these other private sector competitors in the same market. If we proceed with the lease, we're effectively using ratepayer funds to guarantee the proposed leasee a tidy profit, quite a substantial profit that will flow out of our municipality. And I'm sure our other local accommodation providers would have welcomed a council capital investment of $500,000 into their business instead of having to pay commercial bank rates to borrow the same amount of money. And I'm sure they'd quite welcome a rate cap also, particularly given if they invested $1 million into their business, their capital improved value would have increased by $1 million and they would be paying an additional $4,000 in rates. We successfully operate Blue Water, the Colac Sale Yards, Copac and the Apollo Bay Court. These are quite complex businesses and I feel we should have at least explored more fully direct operation of this relatively small campground and retain the profits for the benefit of our ratepayers. So, councillors, I'm opposed to this overly generous deal to the proposed leasee. I'm especially disappointed in our lack of consideration towards other private sector accommodation providers in Colac, and I'm opposed to the flow of profits to a multinational company based outside our municipality. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Constant. Any other councillor? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. Look, I'd speak in support of the motion overall. The Lake Colac Caravan Park is obviously an important asset for our community. I see that. There is a total investment of over $1 million going into this. You're sure $500,000 from the local community into that, who owns the asset per se as far as a caravan park, not the land. We get that for nothing because it's Crown land. This is not unusual from a commercial sense. It is not unusual for a commercial operator of a commercial premises that needs upgrade to negotiate with a good tenant who's going to provide a firm lease for a long period of time, for them to bury a substantial amount of capital into that asset on behalf of the owner of that asset, and as a result then get concessions otherwise. And usually that means that they don't have to pay a substantial amount of lease for a period of time. So this is not unusual in that context. This preferred offer, the preferred contract that we're looking towards, they provide us a reassurance of their experience within the industry and that they will have growth, will benefit from the growth of their administration of this asset. I'm just reading through my notes here. We have the advantage also, like any other commercial operator, because of the money that they're going to bury into this, that we get the use of that asset going forward and that value. It doesn't diminish from our perspective. It would be better than us trying to put $1 million into it and operate it ourselves to get a similar outcome. If we look at Blue Water, well, we lose hundreds of thousands a year on that, so let's not pretend that we're making the profit on that. I'd hate to see that duplicated here. We hear so much about us. We're just getting $77 a week in lease. I'll go back to the comment by officers before to an earlier question. The reality is we're getting $1,650 a week. That's what the value of this capital is over the next 6 years. And in reality, it's much more than that because it's in today's dollars values. It will be put into it in the next 2 years as the maximum time period for them to get use out of this asset. So that brings it forward. That would be worth far more that in mathematical terms if to put it into present day values. So this is a good commercial outcome for this community. It does stack up. It's quite, in my view, a nonsense to suggest it's only a $77 a week lease. It is not. That is wrong in my view. So it's because of all of those things and the value of the administrator, what they're going to bring to the table, I support the motion. Noting that, of course, even with what Tosh has put in, it doesn't try to micromanage things. It allows things to happen in an organic way.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't want to just keep repeating what others have said, but I will agree and note that this is an important facility to the community. Councillor Arnott actually summed it up quite well. We've got a $515,000 investment by the tenant, so it's not just the rent that's been received, and the prior rental arrangement didn't require the payment of rates as well. This arrangement would require payment of rates of up to $5,000, which is indexed to CPI. I also understand from the advice from the officers that the current rates, if they were levied, would be in the 3,000s. That's under $4,000. So there is some room there that rates could possibly increase as the facility has some capital improvements. I think the change that Councillor Finnegan has put in is a good one. It highlights the priorities of capital expenditure, and whilst it is true that if there was anything left after they're done, it might be used for some other aspect. That would only occur if in my view, if the priorities that have been identified in the resolution by Councillor Finnegan have already been completed. So that is a good change. And I'd be surprised if the tenant would leave after year 6 if they've invested $515,000. So the way this is structured, the way the various terms are structured, I think that that this places an incentive on the tenant, the chosen tenant, the preferred tenant, to develop and improve the park and manage it for the long term. And it's certainly a much needed part of the accommodation offering in Colac.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Thanks, Councillor Hanson.
I also won't go over what other councillors said, but this is actually very positive for the Colac Otway community. It's a much-loved caravan park in a fantastic position, but it does have its limitations. It is a very small caravan park, and with that does come its challenges. So that's why we are entering sort of into this arrangement where assets have become degraded over time, and there is a need for capital improvement. That the council will be co-investing in the capital improvements at the caravan park, which will certainly be not only fantastic for the community but also the visitors to the community, and I think there will be great economic benefit, and I've certainly been provided with information that certainly gives me confidence that the economic benefit is well and truly there. I am not supportive of council operating the caravan park ourselves, while we do successfully operate other ventures, and I think Blue Water, for one, was raised as an example. I also, when I heard that, I very much agree with what Councillor Arnott has said. I think that this council can't afford another Blue Water to operate a business successfully like Blue Water. It is significantly subsidised by the ratepayer every year, and that's certainly not something that we can add to council's financial situation. I also want to say that the Colac Otway Shire has many different business types in the Shire. We have some fantastic small businesses, locally owned, locally run. We have multinationals that operate within our Shire, are fantastic employers. And the Colac Otway Shire has also grown, there's businesses that have started here that have become multinational businesses. All types of businesses operate in the Colac Otway Shire. That has been certainly very positive. So there were some comments made about this, sort of negatively about this being a multinational lessee. And, I'll certainly say, well, in the Colac Otway Shire, all types of businesses operate here. So I think this is very positive for our community.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor White, you're reserved.
Thanks, Mayor. Not to go over what everybody else has just said, but to, reinforce some of it. And I respect Councillor Costin's position, but as outlined by Councillor Hart and Councillor Arnott and the other councillors, we just cannot forget that there is a $500,000 investment coming into this park, and the preferred lessees have committed to that $500,000 investment, and that's so important for the development of the park and taking it forward. And we have been reassured from our legal advisors that there is no unfair advantage and that we have the right to invest in our park. So we cannot forget that matching commitment. And it's not just the economic benefit of the park, it's also the social and other benefits that come with investing in the park. It is a really important community asset, and it's our responsibility as councillors to ensure that we invest in our asset and we make sure that it's fit for purpose and contemporary. The key terms have been discussed and reworked and gone over a number of times. This has been going on for a very long time, and it's brought us to a position today that I think we can ensure that we're going to get the best outcome for the community. The submitted proposal is comprehensive, and it has got a clear plan to take us forward for the development of the park. But most importantly, it does align with our council plan around a strong and resilient economy. And in that council plan, there is a theme around that, and there's a number of objectives. And by investing in this park and ensuring that we have got a good offering for our tourists into the future, it is important that we remember that it does align with our council plan. Particularly, it talks about visitor accommodation, it talks about resilient businesses, key infrastructure. So we must remember that it does align with our council plan. So that's why I'm very strong in supporting this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Finnegan, right, a reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one thing that's also been hasn't been highlighted as part of this and as part of the the key lease conditions here is that there are people who actually live in this park as permanents, and we've managed to get into this sort of the key lease conditions that they can't be charged more than $200 per week in rent as part of these lease conditions until September 1, 2025, and that fees and charges cap, so that amount can increase by CPI annually after that date. And I think that's a really important outcome for those who are living in the park, and they are permanent residents. We can't replace them once they've gone, but once they, once they leave, we can't replace them with new permanent residents, but it is a really important outcome for those who are living in that park. Other points are that, we are getting $515,000 in investment from Belgrade, the group that are taking on this lease, and we're getting this investment from that group, and we will see benefit to the area. I think that if you look at the park as it currently stands, it's been allowed to fall into a pretty poor state, and this investment will revive one of our key assets and hopefully drive visitor numbers back to the region in areas and offer a more diverse accommodation outcome for people who are seeking to visit our region and inject money into our local economy. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Thanks, Councillor Costin. The motion is carried 6-1. Division is called. All those in favour? Councillor White, Councillor Hart, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Finnegan, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Potter. Against? Councillor Costin. Thanks, councillors. That concludes the unscheduled